Hello and welcome to the Gambling Files podcast. Slightly unusual intro this time in that it's just me and no Fenton. Don't read anything into that. He's doing busy executive shit, just like always. Just like the covert CIA operative he is. I wanted to do a quick intro. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that's been listening. And a huge thank you to our guests up to this point and our future guests. But, you know, hang on, the dog's fucking... Dude. Fuck me. I need to get a quieter dog and cat in 2025. But also to thank our sponsors, genuinely to thank our sponsors. I know I say they're all virile, considerate lovers, but honestly, the time that we put into these things, their contribution makes it possible for us to do that. So that's a big deal for us. So that is Optimove, number one, CRM software suppliers to the iGaming industry. It's OddsMatrix / EveryMatrix. Nothing to do with Keanu Reeves, sadly, but possibly. I don't know if their marketing department's listening, but maybe there's a tie-in you could do in the future. Or a John Wick thing. I don't know. I'm not a consultant, let's put it that way. And anybody that's met me knows that. So those guys, and Clarion Gaming, of course. Now, by the time you hear this, it's probably already 2025. And it's going to be a big, big year for Finton. Which, if you've listened to the Christine Parkhill episode, I'm not sure if that one's been out yet because I can't remember what order they're going out in. But you'll know that Finton's predicting is going to be a big year for Costello. And I'm pretty sure it will be because he's a good guy and he's a clever guy and he's doing some really exciting and interesting things, some of which I'm allowed to know a little bit about. As for me, probably do some more podcast episodes. Bit of this, bit of that, bit of ducking, bit of diving, bit whoa. But I hope you have a fantastic 2025. And I know a lot of people have had a very hard time the last several years, and I just hope things are good for you and for your family. So here's to that. This episode, meet Andrew Cardno of Quick Custom Intelligence, one of my favorite people in the gambling industry. And Finton's missed him again. Andrew Cardno. We have no Finton for the next interview, so I was going to say that's quite unusual, but it's I don't know that it is at the moment. And Finton, if you're listening, I'm not judging you. I'm not judging you at all. You're very, as regular listeners will know, he's very busy and important. But no Finton, which is a real shame because our guest is, in the best way possible, a real nerd. And Finton is also a real nerd, and I really wanted you two to meet.
Do I get to meet him sometime? Is that how the plan?
Well, I hope so. You know, I hope if this doesn't go horribly, you'll come back at some point. There are just no guarantees on this podcast. Yeah, exactly. People often start saying, "Oh, thank you for having me. That's great," and we're always like, "You might want to, you might want to wait."
Oh, sorry. Thank you for having me today, John.
No, you definitely don't want to say that because there's still so much time for it to go wrong. It's like when people say to me, "How are you, John?" And I always say, "Well, I haven't shit my pants yet." That "yet" is very important because there's still plenty of day to go, you know? And so it's like, I feel like I'm winning so far today, but it just needs one errant sneeze and the day could change complexion quite drastically. But anyway, we're joined by Mr. Andrew Cardno, who is the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Quick Custom Intelligence. Andrew, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today, John. I've got all sorts of things to talk about and some really important things at the end as well. Some like last comments that I'll hold out on. Okay.
That's probably for the best. And if you like, I can take my headphones off so it's just between you and the listeners.
No.
So we first met, I think it was about 3 years ago at G2E, when we were introduced by the excellent Paul Spears Hernandez. And Paul was like, "Oh, you got to meet this guy. You're going to love him. You're going to love him." And when people say that, I'm usually thinking, "Yeah, right." But when Paul Spears says it, you're like, "Okay, I'll give this a go." And we met, and it was terrific. And I walked away with a copy of the book, The Math That Gaming Made. And I can't remember which edition it was. One of the 47 that you've done.
Probably 6.
Maybe
6 of 11, I think.
But I really enjoyed the book. I really did enjoy the book, and I did not expect to. I mean, something called The Math That Gaming Made, you're not going to look at that and think, well, fuck, I better go make some hot chocolate. That's going to be a real page turner.
Oh, it sounds like hotcakes. Are you kidding me?
But I really enjoyed it. And you've recently done an updated edition. I mean, another update, but you have, haven't you? You've recently done a sexed up one.
That's right. 11th book. Yeah, we decided to do a compendium. It's been a lot harder than we thought, but there was a lot of material. We had the introductory guide to database marketing. We had the method, the gaming made, like 4 volumes, and a couple of other books, and a lot of writing. And we thought we're going to put it all together. Well, it took probably 18 months and 3 tries before we really got it right. But now there is the green color version, if you're looking, there is a green color version that has just about everything that I've been involved in writing for the last 14 years. We got it down to just 700 pages or so.
Is that all?
Yeah. And what I think is kind of sort of fascinating about the book, like the history of the writing. Like, we started out writing all this really heavy math stuff, like literally starting with where statistics started, and building up with really core concepts, predictive models and how you deal with seasonality and how you classify data and advanced visualization techniques, all sorts of really advanced stuff. And then we went the other way. We started to say, well, okay, so what do you do at the beginning? And we wrote that next. So we wrote the beginning to the book after we wrote the book. When we put the whole thing together, you can read it in the direction that it should have originally been written. Instead of a whole lot of hardcore math, you can actually read the background and then the math behind it. Why am I doing a clustering? Why am I doing a forecast model? Okay, why is test and control important? Well, here's a book that explains the core principles of database marketing and other matters around it.
Well, that does sound good. And where can interested readers find this book?
It's on Amazon. Yeah, just get the green color one.
Green color? What do you mean by green color? You mean like all the pictures are green?
It's green. The cover is green. There's so many of them. If you go and search for Andrew Cardno on Amazon, you're going to find a lot of books.
Cover.
Right?
I thought you said green color.
I said the green color one. I did say green color.
But okay, but
with green cover.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's got a green cover on it, and it's in color. So I'm actually saying 2 words, and let me say them slowly. It has a green cover, and it is the color edition.
Okay,
don't buy the black and white edition.
Actually, I emailed you after I read the other one, and I said, "Look, this is great, but you refer to colors in the text, and all the illustrations are mono, and it's driving me mental." And I think you came back and said, "Yeah, we're going to sort that out."
It's only taken me 2.5 years to fix it. Yeah,
I think
it was a lot of work. Oh my goodness!
I should probably be in the dedications page or something as a result, though.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll put you on the next one.
Yeah, I'm not waiting
in
2.5
response
more
to John's
years.
request.
Fucking hell, dude. Should be in there already. It should be me, your English teacher, and your parents. Come on. So one of the reasons that I thought it'd be a good time for a chat was, I get a fair amount. Well, actually, John, one of the things that inspired me reaching out to get you on the podcast was we just had Paul on. We just had Paul Spears Hernandez on.
a gentleman I'm a huge fan of, and we I get communications from Paul about quick custom intelligence successes in the industry, and you seem to have been on a pretty steady growth path. I mean, there's a fair amount of casinos using your services now.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say there's never been a company in our industry with our kind of growth. This, the nearest were some of my other companies, maybe, but we've grown. Like, depends whether you say COVID was the start, but in 3 years we've basically grown to about 250 resorts from nothing, right? In 6 countries, with another 500 or so locations.
It's that kind of growth is often what. Well,
and by the way, there's another 100 or so that we're currently in different stages of deployment or pilots with, right? It's actually quite wild.
Yeah, that's insane. Because that kind of growth would kill a lot of companies. I know people are like, it's a great problem to have, but actually overtrading is a very real thing.
Everybody says that until you're in the middle of it, and it really isn't a great problem to have. Like, every investor, and we don't have any, we bootstrapped. But every investor says it's a great problem to have. Just spend more money, right? And we decided not to do that. We decided to run profitably.
So not only have you expanded like some kind of crazy thing, but you've done it without taking on investment and without taking on debt.
We haven't taken on any equity. We have a little debt, but no, it's less than 15% of our revenue.
That's seriously unusual.
Just working capital. It is unusual. It is very hard to do. Yeah, and I think it's a testament to the product and the team behind the product. Dr. Thomas, my business partner, and I focused very, very, very heavily on, kind of like we wrote the book. We did all the hard stuff first, right? We did all the data wiring and plumbing and data translation layers and everything else that are really, really miserable to build, right? And you can you can get something called technical debt and avoid that step. But we thought, no, we're just going to do it properly. And that meant we weren't building really cool front-end stuff, which I love to do, right? Like beautiful super graphics and other things like that. We weren't doing that stuff. We were just churning away at the hardcore back-end data stuff, which I also love to do. But, that's that focus on infrastructure allowed us to deliver what we demoed and then move it all forward, right? Like move everything forward. So we've been able to build momentum in the product by building from a core architecture that's very robust and easy to deploy and supportable.
Now we've got to come to a key question.
And of course, we decided to not employ a chief operating officer at the start of 2023 and build one using generative intelligence. I think we talked about that. Did we talk about Jarvis?
We have talked about that on a previous conversation, but
yeah, I think we did talk about Jarvis, right? Yeah,
but that wasn't
Jarvis
this
is
podcast.
going great. Oh, yeah, Jarvis is going great. He is generative intelligence. He actually started out as a workflow engine in 22, which we were using to run things, and then when generative came out, OpenAI came out, we were like, wow, if we just hook these things together, we can make an intelligent workflow engine and get them to run our business. And it's been a very large portion of our development effort has actually been internal tooling for us to run QCI. I would say maybe half, right? It's probably 30%, but it might be half. It's a lot. And some of those features have flowed into the core products. So it's a little bit of a fuzzy line now. Yeah. And the experience of having an AI agent run your business has been very relaxing.
I'm going to put a light on.
It's a very relaxing experience.
Just realised it's getting dark.
Oh, that's probably why I couldn't see you. Yeah. So we took Jarvis, and you could ask a question if you like, but there's two basic models two models for how people are doing generative artificial intelligence, or if you like, ChatGPT or OpenAI. I just call it generative. It's generative pre-trained transformers. I call it generative. So there's two basic models. There's a model called a Copilot, and like literally every software company out there just about has one of these things. And by the way, we have them, right? So and it's because they're kind of easy to build. Sort of, you sort of plug in an intelligent agent into your existing API layer or something, and people can talk to it and ask questions. It's really extraordinary what you can do with a Copilot. And the second model is called I haven't yet figured out how to pronounce it correctly, a simulacra or a simulacrum, or a copy of a person, right? And simulacra plural, and a simulacrum is singular, I think. So you make a simulacra, and what it is, you would think, what does it mean to have a copy of a person? Not a person, it's a copy of a person. It doesn't have any, it's more like Spock, because it has no emotions at all. Like, it's completely devoid of any kind of human empathy or a lot of these characteristics that you would expect of a human. It doesn't have them. But it is always there. So you got these two models, right? The Copilot model and the simulacra model. Now, it turns out, because we have a lot of experience, because we implemented a lot of Copilots internally, we were very heavy users of generative intelligence internally, it's very stressful. Because Copilot is like having this team of over-enthusiastic, our university graduates who do anything you want, anytime, and they've always got boundless energy, and you're like, will you just take a time out and take a rest? We're going to take tonight off. And they're like, no, we just want to work. And you say, well, how does that manifest? Look, like I remember the moment when I figured it out. It was like 6 p.m. I think it was a Tuesday night. And, and I'm like, I've got this technical briefing document I've got to write. In another world, for generative, I would have said to my product management team, hey, go away and write this. And I would have gone out and had done more yoga or something. Well, that's not how it works, because I was like, you know what? I can do this right now, and it will only take me 30 minutes. And I'm like, I'm so tired. I don't want to do it right now. So I sit down and I bang this thing out. Did a really good job. Got it finished. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm officially done. That's what it's like with a Copilot. You can always do so much more. You're the bottleneck. With a simulacra, it's different. With a simulacra, you're no longer the bottleneck. Someone else is organizing it for you. You've got this tireless energy of organizational forces that's always making sure the right people are all connected with the right stuff and the right things are happening, and running around organizing everything's got tentacles and all over the business, right? Amazing. Very relaxing. Very calming, because the humans can do that stuff. Hey, don't get me wrong, humans are very good at doing that. Some of us, I guess. But when you're having an AI do it and you're watching the AI do it, it is very peaceful. So you basically don't have to work as hard. It's the opposite of a Copilot. Copilots will likely cause your workforce, people, certainly my experience, they'll cause me to work more. Simulacra save me effort. So we've built a simulacra at QCI that is a copy of myself and Dr. Thomas. We've put the business skills inside him, and he's a cat, actually, and he runs our business for us. And that's one of our great secrets to growth. That's why we've been able to grow, compound 100% for the last 3 years.
I mean, just the growth is extraordinary, but the story of the creation of that tool is amazing. I mean, obviously, it's still the fucking buzzword or buzz term, and people are getting kind of switched off with it because fucking AI this, AI that, and people that aren't even using fucking AI are using the term, say, yes, this, it's that. But I've not heard of anybody using the technology in this way, in a way where I suppose you could say that the technology has autonomy, I suppose. Because
it's a fascinating experience. Like, we started out with the Copilot. I haven't heard of it either. Like, a couple of companies sort of said they were using AI to run their business, and then we did it, right? But it's something we learned a lot along the way to do it, right? We've learned a lot about what it's like organizationally, because we were growing so fast. It hasn't, I think in some environments people say, I was going to replace people, right? It hasn't, because we would have had to have a much different organizational structure, much bigger, probably double the number of people. There's about, 65 people, 70 people in QCI today in the group. But, probably would need over 100 if we didn't have Jarvis, right? 50% reduction in what we need to do what we're doing, which is why we're profitable. But, profit in a technology company brings a sense of calm, right? You're not constantly worried about, are we going to, like, I don't know if you know the old analogy, venture capital money is like leaping out of a plane with a parachute and wondering if it's going to open before you hit the ground. It feels great for the first 2,000 feet, right? And then the ground starts getting real close. You're like, I really hope this thing opens, right? Well, we don't have that feeling. And when management doesn't have that feeling, right? When the ownership doesn't have that feeling, I think the culture of the organization becomes more relaxed and calm. You're not constantly worried about the next board meeting.
That's it. It allows people to do the things that they're hired for and that they're good at. There's a great phrase
and it's always organized.
It's a great phrase some writer used, and I can't remember who it was attributed to, but it was basically, I don't want AI to do the shit that I enjoy doing, like, writing fiction and drawing pictures. I want AI to do the laundry and clean the floors to give me the time to write the stories and paint the pictures. And that's
exactly
essentially
right. What everyone's doing is we're busy building these co-pilots that write the stories and do the pictures and giving ourselves the organizational roles. It's backwards, right? Like, so we figured that out really early. Like, we were like that's why we built Jarvis. Like, Dr. Thomas and I, that's my business partner, aka Ralph, we figured this out. It's like, oh yeah, we want to do the human things, right? The creativity and the drive and the new stuff, and we don't want to do the organizational infrastructure. Like, we want everything around the company to be automated. That's a very big thing. And I think the world, it is kind of terrifying when you look at what a co-pilot model can do. You feel like it's going to replace the creative component of humans. And I don't think it is, right? I think it's a little bit of an illusion, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, they're amazing and they can help you write things and fill in text and do stuff, but there's some spark that's missing. And I say that as someone who's used them a lot, right? Like, there's a spark, there's a human creativity, a human direction, a human endeavor, the human humor, right? And these co-pilots are like a copy of everything we've ever done and was. And the humans don't care about that. We want to do something new and different, right? Not some interpolation model on what we've done before. And so that's how we see it, right? We see the model, this being one where we can get artificial intelligence to run things for us so we can do the fun, creative stuff and be leveraged like crazy. You can produce even more, right?
Well,
and that's what we built. We built Jarvis. Yeah, we've been able to run the business with all this growth. We've proven it. The model works, right? And what's really fun about Jarvis, it's really important. He's very boring. Like, you would never want to go and have a cup of coffee with him. Right? He's the most unemotional, machine, right? It's all he is. And so he doesn't, when he's evaluating sentiment in emails or when he's writing an email or something, he's always dispassionate, right? He does exactly what you tell him to do. No human will do that. It's like, the moment you put humans in, stuff happens, right? No, goes in all sorts of different directions. That's our nature. That's what we do. We can't, there's a point A and a point B. We can't go from point A to point B. We've got to go like this. Like, humans don't move in straight lines. It's like course correct, course correct, course correct, course correct. And in the end, it's better. Because we learn all the things you shouldn't do along the way. We learn and create. We learn more by our mistakes than our successes.
I always say to my kids, Andrew, I always say you don't learn anything by getting it right.
Right. So that's what the humans are going to do. And, human creativity is boundless and human desire to do things is boundless. Like, we open up, I don't know. I mean, look at social media. Maybe don't look at social media, but like 10 years ago, right? Or 20 years ago, if someone had said, there'll be this huge social media industry. Like, a what? Really? There is, right? Like, and that's the nature of humans. We fill, our creativity fills to the limit of what we can do. That's I think what's likely to happen. Of course, I'm the optimist, right? Like, you hear some people say, they're worried they're going to replace everyone, and it's a serious concern. But I have, where I'm sitting today, I'm not seeing that in our business. I'm just seeing us grow and have fun and do new things and push the envelope and do even more technology and focus our resources on even more interesting things.
From my perspective, I mean, as somebody that writes and makes shit up for a living, AI on its very best day is never, ever going to be able to do that. And the example that I always use is I could get generative AI to write me 2,000 words or, God, I don't know, 50,000 words on the bombing of Dresden in World War II. But I'm never going to be able to get it to write Slaughterhouse 5.
That's a good example, yeah. And we value creativity, right? We value unique things. Humans do, right? So the economy kind of always moves towards value, right? That's probably what's going to happen. It is like generative has happened very quickly. This is a very large transformation. I don't think it's going to be easy. And I listened to Sam Altman talk about it, and he was like, why do it now? Why not wait until it's really built out? And he said, and his response, which I thought was quite thoughtful. I think he's a very thoughtful person. I haven't met him. It's just my assessment from a podcast, so I don't know. But maybe I'm wrong. But his response was quite thoughtful. He said, and I'm going to paraphrase him terribly, but I wanted to get it out and people used to it and using it before we'd finished, before we got there, so people would adapt. You didn't want to wait, and that I think history will tell. But that was probably the right approach, right? Give us a chance to move before is really super mature.
But I mean, one of the points of doing it the way that they've done it, and there's an example I always use in this, but you can create technology or content or whatever you want with a specific end use in mind, but it's not you that decides the end use; it's the user. And the best example of that is SMS in mobile phones. You know, I mean, Nokia put it on as an afterthought, and it ended up being the main driver for mobile phone adoption. And it influenced how people got their plans and stuff. Because if you're on the same plan, you get free SMS and all that. And it was a big friggin' deal. Nokia didn't decide that. And I think I do think it's the same for this. You know, I think people are coming up with novel uses, coming up with interesting uses, coming up with fun stuff, and it's going to carry on developing, and it will go places where we haven't where we haven't thought of, where we haven't imagined it can go, because some bright spark will go, hey, check this out, and we'll all go, holy shit.
Yeah. I think it's going to democratize computational capabilities, and these or democratize creativity, or democratize making of movies or something, right? Think about a great author, a great book. It's got an incredible story. It's pretty conceivable that could just be turned into a movie by AI. Like, it's pretty conceivable, right? Probably someone, maybe someone's already done it. I've seen some things that are close, so it's like conceivable in the next 6 months, right?
That last fucking Ant-Man film, Andrew, I don't know if you saw that, but that could have been done by AI. That was shite.
Right. Is the movie going to be any good? I don't know. Is it going to be a blockbuster or a tentpole? I don't know, but yeah, like that kind of graphic kind of capability in that was the domain of these huge, expensive, Hollywood-esque labs. And now anyone with a computer and that's connected to a supercomputer cluster of AI can do it. Like okay, so that's everyone, but that could change something. The path out with something like movies and everything like that. Like, you're making software, you're designing cars, anything you're doing, right?
That's what I was going to come at.
You used to need all this infrastructure.
Where this could have one of the most profound impacts is in computer games. It takes Rockstar 4, 5, 6 years and how many tens of millions to produce a game. I think you're going to start seeing that the budgets come down and the development time come right down on these things, because it also can be used in the testing side of it and speed up the testing side. Because in an open world, in-game open world, there are so many incredibly complex variables that you need to test. Well, shit, you could do that in a week if you've got the computing power.
But the question is, like, if you look at Baldur's Gate 3, which I think took 4 or 5 years to make, right? Incredible game, right? Given how much time it takes to play it, which is enormous. I don't know the time. Hundreds of hours probably you could spend in that game. And you consider a game like that, and you go, okay, it's why does everyone play it? Why is it so successful? It's because it's better than everything else. So it's quite conceivable that AI could generate the next Baldur's Gate 3, but there's going to be 1,000 of them. So what's the game that everyone's going to play? What level of production does that have? And that's the unknown, right? Are we going to? Are the new toolings going to result in us spending even more time building them? Like, I would argue that the tooling we have today to make computer games of today, compared with 10 years ago, are so extraordinary. The games we made 10 years ago would take like a day. I don't know. I don't make computer games, but incredibly short period of time to make a game from 10 years ago. Like, I don't know if you're going to make Doom or something. Like, I bet you some high school graduate has written a Doom-esque game in an afternoon. Like, it's crazy, right? Well, so now people could spend 4 years in a huge team. so the trend is the opposite of what you're saying. Like more tech seems to be, we want to capture more creativity, and maybe that's where it's going. I don't know, but it's the other path, right?
I don't know, but you would think with the budgets of these games.
We're way off topic, by the way.
It brings down the entry level for people to do console games. Because they're so incredibly expensive to do, but also it lowers relatively few movies get made and shown at theaters because the cost of failure is very high. There's loads of different ways to watch movies, but theaters, they want bums on seats. Very important. They want to sell popcorn. They want to sell hot dogs. They want to sell £15 tickets. Yeah. And so the movies are bigger and flashier and fucking 24 Marvel movies or whatever it was in that last cycle, etc.
Which was awesome until the end. Yeah.
But it's not sustainable. And it's kind of it's a sort of similar thing with games. There's so much budget in there. There's such an insane amount of money to make a Red Dead Redemption, what's the big one?
Thor? Marvel?
No, the big game. I can't think what it's called. I want to say Command and Conquer, but it's not Command and Conquer.
Baldur's Gate 3 is probably the biggest game.
I think it's CSGO or whatever. All of those games. If the game cost $120 million to make and develop, plus the marketing costs, then the margins become ever thinner unless risks are taken, and unless you can reduce those costs. Nobody's going to take those creative risks. They're all just going to do what the movie studios do, which is try to recreate the last hit, which is the death of creativity.
So I gotta say, I do not write games for a living. So, I just play them occasionally. So I'm like, I don't know this business, but I would speculate the opposite. It's not about making a game. It's about making a great game. So I worked with Sony Home Entertainment on DVD marketing, right? For years, and I learned a lot, right? And the better story, the better title. I don't know what it is that makes a great movie. I think the real experts in it are geniuses, and they just seem to be able to make them. And we'll all with hindsight say we know why. But something that people want to watch, the game that people want to play. The trend right now is more effort, more creativity, more human involvement, even though the tooling, which already exists, is massively better than it was. Like the productivity of a movie studio or of a game studio today has got to be 50 to 100 times what it was 10 years ago. Yet they're bigger. And so the macro trend is sort of like the opposite of that. And sure, you could make a copy of something that was made 2 years ago, but I can tell you right now, the game studios are not doing that, and the movie studios are not doing that. They're thinking about the next big thing because they're trying to be the best in the world. There's a lot of noise out there, like high school kids, university graduates making great movies as a one-off, right? I don't know if that's going to be the landscape. Maybe it's the other way. Certainly that's the trend, John. But, who am I? Like, this is not my field. I'm so far out of my field.
No, the movie things, it's something that's been fairly well documented that, the major studios, they can't afford X amount of failures and heads will roll. And so, they are just not taking risks. But that's been established for decades and decades.
Half of the money goes to the actors or something, and
it's not even that in some cases. It's, the cost of marketing, blah blah. But anyway, the one thing that we haven't talked about is we haven't talked about what Quick Custom Intelligence, aka QCI, actually does.
No, we haven't.
We should probably tell people.
My business now, not movie making.
It always comes around to movies in the end.
Yeah, the story of QCI. So I think there's two really important pieces to, apart from the fact that we have an artificial intelligence running our business, right? A simulacra or simulacrum called Jarvis. But apart from that, there's two really important parts. You walk into, I always make this terrible joke. My jokes are never funny, so I always have to tell people this is a joke. Whenever I visit a casino and I have to talk to them, I say, hey, when I came in this morning, I didn't see a casino. And they're like, I couldn't find it. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's pretty obvious it's here, right? Because you're in it. Well, I saw this beautiful hotel, and I saw this RV park, and I saw this golf course, and I saw this huge entertainment district, and I saw all this stuff. And eventually I found a casino in the middle of it. It's a resort. And it's like, we're not a casino industry anymore. We're a resort industry. And even the systems, right? Like today, you've got the hotel system, the point of sale system, table game system, the slot system, the golf system, the valet system. Probably 50 core systems running this business. And so as a guest, I walk in the front door. This is not a phone. I walk in the front door with a phone, and I want to have an experience. I want everything to be integrated. I want to talk to somebody who knows about everything. And so before you get into what we do, somebody has to put all of that stuff together in a way that's affordable. John, to your point earlier about the cost, right? Now, this is, I can opine on this, right? One can, and I have built one-off data integrations in so many resort properties that it's countless, right? And it's a massive project and a huge amount of engineering, a huge amount of custom work, and really clever people doing really great work. And it takes, to do it properly, oh my goodness, a year or two, right? Sometimes more, right? And that's just purely based on experience. And whenever I started out doing one of these projects, I would always be like, oh, I'll have it done in 8 weeks. And I get into it, I'm like, how is this taking so long, right? Like, it's just crazy how big. And I learned, right? I learned what it really takes, just pure experience. Well, QCI does that resort work, and the actual piece of work that we do to build that takes a day or two. So we've automated it. The integration of a resort at the back end on the data. And the thing that used to take me a year, now we do in 2 days, which is amazing. And a consistent, integrated data platform that sees the whole business, right?
So it's an overarching sort of interface for the resort management to use so that they can easily see what all of the different parts of the resort are doing, and it sort of disseminates the information, can generate reports and shit like that for them.
Well,
okay, so it makes life a lot easier.
Reports. Just say, firstly, just think of it as, imagine that like, I don't know, we're talking about games like Mario Brothers or something. Like we're the data plumbers, right? I'm a data sewage worker, right? So yeah, that's it. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. We're wiring up the plumbing of these businesses, right? And you look at it and you say, is there any chance that the hotel system, be it Infor, Opera, whatever it is, right, is going to integrate, is going to become a part of the gaming system? See, it's never going to happen. I mean, firstly, the regulatory challenges in doing that would be just insurmountable. But it's just, they're going to talk to each other, maybe. But that's just one system. Look at 10 others. You're going to get them all to talk to each other? It creates this combinatoric mess. So you need a piece to put together. That's the first thing we are. So we're really good at doing that and managing that and making sure that that data sewage work and that plumbing keeps working. And then you say, well, okay, so what do you do with it, right? Well, what we do tools, the business is up here, and they don't really care about all these systems. They just want them to work, and they've got a job to do. And our job is to give them tools to do data activation. So data activation, we're a data activation company. So you're making a call to a customer because the data activation layer, because the artificial intelligence or whatever, it told you to make the call. You should call John. You haven't talked to him in 3 months. Why don't you call him? Oh, really? Yeah, that's a human thing to do. Go call him. Find out where he's at. Find out if he liked the steak. Check what kind of wine he likes. I don't know. So you call him. Right? Oh, that's good. All right. So the computer is doing that role, that simulacra, telling you what to do to help you do your job, or guiding you, or giving you ideas about where you can put your effort, reminding you to do stuff. Or you're going to run a marketing program, and the industry is full of marketing programs, and it's crazy. Every property, every resort out there is running marketing programs, and the question that I always like to ask them is, how much lift did you get? There's often blank stares, because that's a really hard problem. Well, that is the job of marketing people, is to generate lift, right? It's like rule 1 of a marketing program when you're marketing a movie is generating sales, right? That's what it is, right? How good was your marketing? How much lift did we get in our revenue? Well, that question is really hard, because you have to know what would have happened had you not done anything in an environment where there's no second property next to it to measure it. So it's like, wow, okay, that's a problem. And we keep changing stuff. Like, humans come along and they keep changing the marketing every month. So how do you know what the lift is? And I would argue, without that, without knowing the lift, how do you know if your marketing department's doing anything at all for you? You could say, this much revenue came in. Last year, this much revenue came in. We're up this much. None of those things tell you about lift. All they're doing is telling you about results, which could have been caused by the market. Your whole market could have gone up 10% or down 10%. If it goes up 10%, we're all marketing geniuses. If it goes down 10%, we blame it on the weather, right? Like it's like, okay, well, but what's the lift? And that question, we answer that question. There's a whole infrastructure you have to put in place just to do that question, right? Like it's really hard. You have to do all sorts of data storage work and plumb it in and make sure you understand the history and build forecast model. Everyone talks about artificial intelligence, right? Oh, we use artificial intelligence. It tells us what to do. It's like, okay, was there any lift? That's a good question. Like, the artificial intelligence told you to do something, so you did it. All right. Did it work? Well, that's a hard question. Oh, I don't know. It told us it would work, and it did. Look at the results. I'm like, yeah, I can see the revenue, but that's not the question. What's the lift? What do you mean lift? The incremental revenue that was generated by your marketing program. Oh, yeah, no, we don't know what that is. We just did what the AI told us to do, and it worked. What do you mean? You sent out the mailer, or you sent the email, and people responded. Like, yeah, they were going to come in anyway, weren't they? Or were they not? I don't know. So the calculation of lift requires good data. All good models come from good data. That's kind of a fundamental truth, right? And as a data scientist, I can say categorically 90% of the time of all data scientists on the planet is building data, right? 10% doing cool models, which is actually the easiest bit. The data is the hard bit. We've got the data curated, so you can calculate lift. And that's the second thing we do. So the first thing is we help people talk with customers. The second thing is we allow the marketing departments to determine lift, right? Which has been a dream of mine. I mean, I've been trying to do that for 15 years. We finally built it, right? And we're giving people these tools to do it. It's really hard. And then we're going to convince them to do it, right? Like, you know, they've actually got to want to actually use the tools. Like, you want me to measure myself? Yeah. No, I'm not sure about that, right? So, like, but that's what we do. We're allowing people to measure lift by creating curated data that can be used to build test and control and build scientific experiments and determine the effect of change in the business. The third thing we do is it's been my dream in the industry for 20 years. It's merchandising. And I make this, another one of my terribly not funny jokes is that, I go to the slot department, the gaming department, and I say to them, how much money did your slot machine make? And they tell me, it did $400 a day. I'm like, okay. And I go to the marketing department and I say, how much money did your customers make? And they say, they did $10 million last month or something. I say, well, you're both wrong. You're completely wrong, right? Slot machine, I've got one in my office. It didn't make me a damn cent. The customer didn't make me any money either. It's when the customer goes to the device, that's when I make the money. It's the interaction of those two things. And
you're sounding like
departments.
Sounding like a pedant now.
A pedant. Why do you say I sound like a pedant?
The slot machine didn't make you money. It's like there's people that say guns don't kill people. People do.
Well, okay, I'm not getting into a gun argument, right?
No,
I'm not
we wouldn't go there.
So,
we're the wrong nationality.
It's a terrible thing to say. No. Well, yeah, I come from my father was a professional hunter. So my house was it's a very different environment, but long story. It was a little bit like Crocodile Dundee without the drinking, but he was a professional hunter. So, but we'll stay away from, that's it. Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. Yeah. All right. So it is a remarkable statement that we can have a marketing department and a product department that are integrated. Like, there's no other industry that does that. Product marketing, product merchandising, category management and retail. These are massive forces that reshaped other industries. And there's a huge opportunity, and that's the tooling that we're bringing. Like, how can we allow you to merchandise your products? And a simple example, right? Like, you've got games, some games perform higher than others. And so therefore, the wisdom is we should get more of them. Well, that may not be correct. That might not be optimal. In fact, it's often suboptimal to do that. And you say, well, how is that possible? Just get more of the best games and players will play them. It's like, no, actually players choose what games they play. It's a lot like a movie. They choose what movies. People like different kinds of movies. No matter how many horror movies you get in your store, if you like, if the person doesn't like horror movies, they're not going to buy one. Even if the horror movies make more money. Like, yeah, you mean people have a choice and they have choices about the games that they like? It's like, yes. Yes, they do. And some customer groups spend less than others. Therefore, those customer groups have lower performing games. So if I remove those lower performing games from the floor, I'll lose those customers to the competitor who have those games. It's like, so it'll reduce my overall revenue. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. Well, can't I just get them to play on the other games? It's like, no, they don't like them. Like, so merchandising, which is like I learned at Best Buy and Walmart, they optimizing their retail space. I learned this stuff for years, right? Is where the margins are really thin. So this stuff really matters for survival in a very competitive retail market. But gaming, we have a much bigger margin, and it hides these decisions, right? It hides them. Now you'll see it in the outcome. When you optimize your gaming based on merchandising, your business will go up. But you have to change what you're doing. You have to be prepared to do something different. You have to be prepared to say, I'm going to think about what my customers like. And I'm going to optimize for the different kinds of customer that I have. That's the third. Now, of course, we're doing, all the basic slot reports and all the basic table reports and all the other kind of analytics and everything as well. So we're doing that too. So those are the three main big things. I'm
they are quite
summarizing
big things, though, aren't they? They are quite big things.
They're all about data activation and how do we use data to change how we see and do things in our business. Not just see it, see and do.
Hang on. I've got to look up something because I got a release a little while ago. There it is. And I don't know if I'm imagining this, right? But I swear I got a release about a new module or a new tool that you'd done. Is it Chatalytics? Yeah. Is that part of what you've just described, or is that something else?
It is part of it. So, and it's a generative part. I was on a very big picture about how people use our tools, right? Like what we do, rather than the tools themselves, right? Well, Chatalytics, in a world where we started with Copilot, which is the first thing we released, which you've kind of figured out. I figured out that that's a good thing to have, but they're very stressful parts of a business, and they may not be the end of the thing that really drives things. Well, a simulacrum is different. So simulacrum, you take the expertise of Andrew Cardno and Dr. Ralph Thomas, and you put it into a generative intelligence. You go, oh, what could go wrong with that, right? And you say to it, hey, build me some analysis. Now, you would say, that's a pretty crazy question. Build me some analysis, right? Like, on what? Now, people will ask me that question, and I have to be able to answer it. So that question, do some analysis on this. Very vague. Our simulacra can answer that question. And it builds a whole dashboard for you. Builds everything. Just the whole thing. Oh, it's like imagine you gave it to Ralph and I, and we went away for a day and came back and said, what do you think of this dashboard? It's like, well, yeah, actually, that's pretty cool. Look at this. It's got all these different interesting ways of looking at the data. It's quite relevant. So we've built a simulacra of ourselves, and we've got huge plans for it, right? Because the sort of the kind of the world of advanced analytics and advanced query building, and how do I build an RFM model, recency frequency monetary value model, or how do I do a segmentation model or something like this? All this stuff, right? It's not, despite having written 11 books on it, there is a lot of expertise beyond that to actually do it in the real world. It takes decades to learn it properly. I mean, maybe a decade you could really learn it. It's taken me decades. How's that? So now we've put that into a robot. So and I actually really enjoy talking with Chatalytics, like chatting with them. You can also talk to them if your keyboard does talk, but that's not special these days. And you can ask questions about just about anything relating to your data, and he'll just build you a model, build you analysis on it, right? As if you were talking to me with my level of expertise, or Ralph with his level of expertise. Now, I test him. Every time I'm using him, I always test him out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask you I'm getting more and more tricky about the question. I try and trick him up. I ask questions that are not answerable. Like, don't have simple black and white answers. I know that to answer this question, he's going to have to do something really twisty. And I have not yet been able to trick him. I play this little game where I say, all right, so how would I do that? And most of the time, it's the same approach. I find it like quite ridiculous, right? Now, what this is doing is it's going to every one of our 250 resort customers and saying, you can now have an analyst in your organization. You can have a data activation expert, a chart builder, who has the level of expertise of Ralph and Andrew, which the fact that I'm even saying that is mind-boggling. But there's a funny story here, John. So I'll tell you how Chatlytics came to being, right? So Ralph and I are busy training this generative model, got all these things, we're telling it to do this, we're telling it to do that. And then we've built it. All right, okay. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, Ralph, this thing, you recognize your own work, right? You recognize, like, this thing's like me. Like, it's like doing what I would do. How does that happen? Like, and so we went back and we looked at our training models and we're like, oh yeah, well that makes sense because we trained it on how we do things. And then lo and behold, it's like us. I'm like, so we didn't actually go out of our way to build Ralph and Andrew. We accidentally built Ralph and Andrew because we just trained it on how we do stuff, right? So it was a complete fluke. So we show this Chatlytics to people. It's really funny to watch because people ask me analytic questions and I come back with results in like a day or two, right? And they go, wow, that's incredible. Well, you get a similar kind of reaction, but it takes like a minute. And watching people go, wow, I can have that now. I can have that capability like right now. It's like, yeah. Like, and 2 years ago, if you'd asked me if we could make an artificial intelligence that can build analytic query, build forecast models, build dashboards, do things as well as I can, I would have said to you, you are dreaming, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. Now I'm like, okay, now we're going to deliberately do it, and we're going to make this thing really good. This is version 1. You're version 2. Woohoo! Because now we've kind of figured out what we did accidentally. Like, we got huge plans. And we're just pleased we didn't put it in a book of all the secret things you do to write great queries, right? All the approaches. And like, I believe it or not, I actually started writing the book on this. And I thought, my previous books were so unsuccessful, this one, no one will ever read it. So I gave up, like, forget it. Like,
well, what a great place to hide the information.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so the books were like foundational and helpful, but we didn't write down the super advanced stuff around how you do advanced analytics, how you write things. We were, I think, getting there, but now instead of doing that, we're going to build it into a generative. We have built it into a generative AI called Chatlytics, and Chatlytics is a standard part of our product, and is a democratization of query, democratization of dashboarding, democratization of data analysis, so that anyone who can have a discussion in any one of 100 languages, in fact, is kind of ridiculous, right? He's multilingual.
Sorry.
You go. Yeah, there you go. That's Chatlytics.
With excuse me, with what you guys do, is there like a minimum size operation?
No.
To benefit,
no.
Or this is any size you can find some way to benefit?
You know, I remember when I first started working, I was working in a grocery outlet with one cash exchange or two, you know, and my boss's name was Clint. He was kind of a little local legend. And anyway, I worked in there and I would talk to people. Well, he used to count the money, figure out what products to put on his store and think about his layout, right? In this tiny little place. I don't know how much money he made. I never really thought about it. I probably could figure out how much money, but it wasn't a lot, right? So the question is, does a small business need to understand profitability and lift and yield and which customers to talk to and merchandising? It's like, yes. Okay. So can we make that affordable? Yes, we've done that. And we've been very successful with smaller properties, and we call them nimble. And what I've discovered is, you know, because you learn by making mistakes, I think. And so when we started QCI, Ralph, I'm quoting this great guy that just told me that. It was you. So thank you, John. Yeah. So when we started QCI, Ralph and I were reflecting, and we're like, we never worked with smaller properties. It never worked. And what I'd always tried to do in the past, I tried to make simple products for smaller properties. And it was just didn't work, right? And so I was like, let's do the opposite. Let's give them everything. And so, we've got hundreds of smaller properties, like places with 30 gaming machines, hotels with 30 gaming machines, like proliferate, right? Places with 200, 300, 400, 500 machines, 100 machines, there's everything. We've got them all, right? And you go down to those smaller businesses. Do they care who their customers are? Yes. Do they want to talk to them? Yes. Do they want to optimize their product? Yes. So, but what I've learned this, I've watched this success story of Nimble, which is probably about a third to a quarter of our business. I've watched the success story of it, and it just amazes me. And these smaller properties, you go there and you say, oh, you can have all of this stuff. And they're like, wow. And I was talking to this IT guy. He was brilliant. He was talking to him all about the network security. I'm like, who's going to do the analytics? He's like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm like, oh, okay. And then you go to the general manager and they're like, who's doing the database marketing? I'm like, oh, yeah, we kind of share that. I'm like, all right. So what you'll find is roles are more blended in a nimble organization. But that's why we put everything together and say everyone can use everything, which has just been wildly successful for us. Now, this is really important in terms of our business, what it means, because in North America, there are a lot of properties. It's about, it depends who you look at, but what you count. But let's just say there's 1,000 casinos and another 1,000 things that are sometimes called casinos, right? So 2,000 properties in North America. Well, there's probably 500 or 800 that have 1,000 machines or more, and there's probably 300 or 500 that have 2,000 or more, right? Something like that. So that's sort of like the core market, that 1,000 plus. And you go to Europe, you're lucky to find a casino in Europe with more than 100 gaming machines, right? And so I realized early on that if we could get the model right up and down the size, we would have an international opportunity. And without it, we would not have an international opportunity. We wouldn't be able to operate in Barcelona, where we're currently deploying, right? Casino Barcelona. So we wouldn't be able to do that with their beautiful property, and they're very proud of it, and it's awesome. By US standards, right? It's a nimble organization. In Europe, it's normal. So we've really refined our model for every size business.
It's a great answer. And interesting that you bring up the European thing, because very often these data-driven products, they're not going to fit into the EU. They're not going to, places that have a single venue or a couple of venues or whatever. So it's very interesting to see something that can hit all of those. I think that, yeah. Like you say, just look at the UK. Your biggest casinos have got, 30 machines or whatever.
Right.
30 machines.
Have a route with a bunch of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very, very interesting. So look, Andrew, thank you.
The guys that run that, you go to that place with that guy with 30 machines, and you're probably going to find some super creative young or super creative businessman or woman that's really thinking about their business and talking to their customers and looking after them and working really hard and will benefit from data activation. It's like it works, right? Of course it works, right? Because the business is small does not in any way mean the people in it are not super smart or not highly motivated or doing a good job or don't need tooling or couldn't benefit from tooling that would help them more. size is kind of an illusion
That's what I always tell the ladies.
of need. I'm not going there.
So I'll get my coat. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's always a pleasure. I just hope next time that we can have Fenton here, because he will geek out with you. He will absolutely geek out with you.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thank you, John. I hope to meet Fenton on your podcast, and it is fun just to talk. Yeah, you're kind of a funny guy, which I'm not, so that works really well. You can make the jokes and I can make a fool of myself.
That's it. That's what usually happens with Fenton, so that works. I'm just kidding. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.